Yeah, well, you know, that's like just your opinion, man.
Hello and welcome to the Audio Opinion Show, where audio people gather to give their opinions about things because somebody thought that was a good idea for a show. And so here we are. I'm joined by 5 of my closest friends and 3 people I don't like very much. You'll just have to decide amongst yourselves who that is. I do want to wish a special birthday to my good friend Andy Lipnick, who is not on screen if you were looking on screen, but who is joining us in driving. And he will get to be Andy for the show for his birthday. And Mr. Broughton will just have to be Mr. Broughton because it's Andy's birthday, and that's how these things go.
I'll give it up to Andy for this.
And we missed it by a day. If the show would have been in the right day, it would have been.
It would have been in the right day, and everything would have been even better. Yep, absolutely true. All right. Well, you know, we know how we start this out. We start, of course, with the most important question. We take a poll of the most important question, and this week, the most important question is, I will read it for those viewers and listeners at home. If you could be any character in The Princess Bride, who would you be? This is a single choice question. You cannot be more than one person. Would you be Wesley? Would you be the Shrieking Eels? Kind of my personal favorite. Would you be the albino? Would you be Fezzik? Would you be the Boo Lady? Boo, boo. Or would you be, yeah, she's great. Or would you be Wallace Shawn? So again, the choices are Wesley, the Shrieking Eels, the albino, Fezzik, the Boo Lady, or Wallace Shawn. Vote early, vote often.
We have our own Boo Lady, which is actually a Boo Man, who's, if you've seen the video, telling everybody to F off in Ottawa.
Well, you promised not to talk about Canada.
I'm the one who said, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, you're the one that said don't talk about Canada.
But
all right,
we're going Boo Lady, and he's like a Boo Man.
Oh, well, there you go. All right, so we're going to end the poll, and the winning result for the poll, sharing it now, is Wallace Shawn, which is, of course, great because it's really the only wrong answer in the entire question because Wallace Shawn was not a character. He played a character, but we all love Wallace Shawn, so that's fine.
Always a trick, isn't there, Brian? Always a trick. Never any questions.
It is the only joy I get in life. So, okay, so let's figure out what our topic is. What's our topic for the day? Launching the poll. We have 4 choices. Our choices are, if you can spec only one piece of gear on a show, which one would it be? To be clear, because I know I've asked a similar question before, not microphones. Literally one piece of gear. So if you pick microphones, you need to pick one microphone. That's it. So you can spec only one piece of gear on a show. Which one would it be? Number 2, what's the most rewarding thing about working in audio? Number 3, what skills do you think that audio schools should be teaching audio technicians, the new audio technicians coming up in the world? And number 4, what's the next piece of gear you want to buy? Vote early, vote often. The host can't vote. I get to make the questions, but I don't get a vote. What, Mr. Broughton?
No, it's good. I got to vote.
You got to vote, yeah.
I don't care if you vote.
Yeah, I had so much love in the room. All right, I think we've definitely got a quorum. It should be a very interesting conversation. I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results. And it looks like what we are going to talk about today is what skills should audio schools be teaching audio technicians? What skills should audio schools be teaching audio technicians? Now, I believe one of the members of our current panel is the one who proposed this question to me. Would you like to begin in your opinion? Because you asked the question, I have a feeling you have an opinion about the answer.
I have a very long list of things, actually, but I'm only going to say one, which I think is how to use microphones. Which needs to include some basic theory about acoustics, about microphone patterns, about the differences between the different operating mechanisms of microphones and which microphones are generally best suited for what particular job. And the reason that I mention microphones in particular is because as a past owner of a sound company, I've had many, many young people come to me with school credentials who would not have a clue how to mic an acoustic guitar or a violin or any of those sort of acoustic instruments. But man, they know every shortcut in Pro Tools. You know?
And
It's
odd
like-
instruments.
and have all the
totally agree
plugins.
with that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And have all the plugins. Exactly.
When you're
I-
faced with an odd instrument, that's always the big question. Where do you want the mic to go, or where should the microphone go? And I
And
know
what
that
kind of
Clive, you've
mic?
always had so much experience in, with all the different groups that you've worked with and orchestras and things like this. You've always, had experience of figuring out this is where the mic goes. So my go-to person was always Clive when it was like, where should I mic that thing? He would say, oh, this is where it goes. So
Yeah,
you
you were
definitely
not
are the expert
alone.
in that area.
I actually many times have fielded calls from people out on the road doing particularly live shows with orchestras as well as a band and a star artist going, oh man, I can't get any basses in the mix. How do I deal with this?
Mhm.
The thing is, Clive, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, is you could do a doctorate on microphone pattern control and how it varies by frequency and how it varies by direction and how it varies by character and the physics of why before you even touched what the instrument sounds like and where you should capture it. It's one of those topics that is, I'm 100% agreeing with you in what I'm saying. It's just that to me, it's the more I think about it, the deeper the rabbit hole gets. It's, I know a lot of rules of thumb, but in some cases, a lot of the, like my microphone choices are based on someone taught me that, or I tried it once and it worked. And now I'm kind of circling back in my old age and going, why does that work? Why does that actually, get a better result? And oftentimes when I really examine it, it's not often the reason that I think it is. In fact, quite often it's the frequency response. It's not so much that's what it's picking up in its pattern. It's that it's rejecting more of that other places, which allows me to bring out that tone in what it's hearing. It's just a really interesting thing. It's like, we look at polar patterns and we look at them in one frequency or 5 frequencies or something and feel like we get some idea of what the pattern of a directional microphone is. And of course, it's nonsense. There's a bajillion frequencies, literally the number bajillion, from, inaudible to inaudible. And every single one of them, that polar plot's going to be a little bit different. It's going to have a little bit different feel and character to it. So,
the end result is you got to listen to it really carefully. Mm-hmm. That's obviously, but I still think there are some basic acoustic principles and operating principles that, students and new audio technicians should know, should have at their fingertips to be able to make at least a sensible decision when faced with an instrument that, maybe they've never mic'd before or whatever.
And to have some of the really common myths dispelled, like you don't have to have a large diaphragm microphone to pick up low frequencies. Like that's not how this works. And now, quite often they have a better character or they have better pattern control at lower frequencies. That's a different thing altogether. But I've gotten very great low end response out of little teeny tiny Omni microphones placed in the right place, and it'll freaking crush you at 47 hertz. It's like the thing is smaller than a human hair, like because of the physics of what's happening behind that. And once you understand it, you go, oh, right. It's not as simple as, bigger microphone makes better bass. Like that's
right. How many large diaphragm measurement mics do you see? They do exist, but there's not very many.
And almost everyone uses like DPA clips on string basses or anything like that.
Usually they're very
Right.
tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the part of the reason why you're not using a bigger diaphragm mic for a measurement microphone is the sheer size of the element introduces its own set of problems with regards to arrival times of different frequencies and from different directions. Just the
Especially
fact that
at high frequencies.
especially at high frequencies, and you end up getting bad measurements just simply based on the diaphragm is dead flat electronically, but physically, because of the size of it, it's like hitting one side of the diaphragm at a slightly different time than the other side, because the stupid thing is, an inch wide instead of a millimeter wide. And now that time difference is creating phase incoherency within the microphone. And again, these are all things that I've only recently, and I'm still not scientifically, but I'm just grasping the concepts. And as I grasp the concepts, I'm like, oh, that's why that works. Or, oh, that's why that didn't do what I expected it to do. And I ended up doing something different because it didn't do what I expected it to do. Or I followed that person's advice and I did this and it didn't really do the thing. And so then I do this other thing and it worked. And so I just have always done that other thing from then on. But now I know why.
Sadly, we don't often have enough time to really go, let me put a couple of different microphones on that and just see which one works better. You have to kind of go by, somebody else said that this one would work, or you just go, I got a 57, I'll just throw that in there because at least I know what that's going to sound like. And it's too bad that we don't, when we do have the time, we don't go, hey, let's put you got a whole bunch of mics in your cupboard there. Let's try a bunch of these and see what it sounds like.
That's one good thing that came out of the pandemic is shows like this where people get to sit around and talk about this stuff. And we've learned a lot in the last couple of years. At least I have.
Another thing caused by the pandemic was practical show tech. And we did a 3-hour show about the physics of microphones and how they work, and got a little bit into specific instruments and how to mic them. But this was done by Steve Savanu, formerly from Audio Technica, who gives this class all around the world. And I put a link to that in the chat.
Yeah, that one, because I watched that one and it was, admittedly 80% of it was review because I've done sound for a day or two. But just when I thought oh, this is all simple stuff, then he would throw some little tidbit in. I'm like, oh, I never thought of it. I just never thought of it that way. It's not that I didn't know that. It's just I didn't know why I knew that. Anybody else have a different opinion about things that people should be taught in tech school?
Interesting. Clive mentioned the word. I had a snarky answer and a real answer, and the real answer was learning to listen. He did say you have to listen, and I think learning to listen would be important.
There are actual classes for doing that.
Also learning how to coil a cable.
Well, that one's number one, and let's face it, it really should be number one. And maybe not so snarky, but for real, if you are going to get into the live production arena, if you show up not knowing how to coil a cable, it doesn't matter if you have a doctorate in acoustics. Everyone on site is going to discount everything you have to say. So it really is that entry ramp of it's the lowest common, you just need to know how to, and if you practice it and do it really well, the legitimacy of everything else that you say will rise based on just the fact that it's a dumb thing, but it's 100% true.
Plus, if you practice it, it's the fastest way to coil a cable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you know how to do it, you can coil 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 foot fiber, but it all hanging on your arm while you're just whipping it onto your arm. It's very, very efficient. I had an argument with a guy on Facebook just recently. He said, you don't need to over under. And he said, you just need to let the cable hang the way it's supposed to. And I thought to myself, well, that's what
That's over under.
Right.
That's what over under is.
that's-
He wouldn't admit that it was over under, but he says, well, anyway.
I think one thing about audio schools is that so many of them are oriented towards recording, which is insane because there are way less jobs that pay any money at all in the recording business than there are in live sound, TV, and other forms of production. So, but it seems that the schools always want to teach how to use Pro Tools and what it's like working in the studio, and they teach those ideas and that speed of working, which is totally useless when it comes to doing a live production.
Sure. And, you said the word listen has been said twice now, but not just listening to an instrument and listening to what it sounds like before you put a microphone on it, but listening to people, listening to other people. I was going to say that the most important thing I feel that people should be teaching is social skills of how to work with other people, how to listen to what somebody has to say, how to contribute properly and work within a team. It's amazing how many people know it all and they jump in, they just want to do everything. And you're like, whoa, you're not working within the team. You're not listening to what we're saying. You're not reading the room. You're not understanding that thing you're doing is not the most important thing. This other thing where you're cleaning the stage or, putting in something where it should be put is more important than that particular reverb tail or something that you're working heavily on. I see that all the time. People just really focused on what they're doing and they think that's the most important thing, not reading the room, not listening, not noticing what's going on around them and realizing that, whoa, I'm not understanding the big picture, right? So I think that's really important, is to understand the big picture when you're involved.
Part of that listening, though, if you are an audio technician, particularly if you're handling the RF coordination aspect of it, is believing that the monitor engineer probably can hear a whole lot better than you. And if they say it doesn't sound right, give them a new frequency. Don't even argue about it.
Yeah, don't try to fight for the right. Go. I'm right, you're wrong, and have a big argument about it. It's like, you know what? He said he wants this. It's great. I mean, I'm dealing with artists all the time who go, I don't like this thing, whatever this is. It's not working for me. It doesn't matter whether you think they're right or wrong. Just give them a new one or do something, make a change, so that they go, well, that person listened to me and they took what I said seriously and they made that change. For right or wrong, they're going to be happy now. And having a happy, working with a bunch of happy people is so nice.
Yeah, it's a form of it's a form of understanding what the hierarchy of importance is. And the hierarchy of importance on a show site is nearly nothing like what you think it is the first 3 days you go on a show site. The things that are important are, how you're working with the crew and how organized things are being put together, and how you can create a good working environment with others, et cetera, are all way more important than
the other departments. Look
right.
Make sure you're not getting in the way of somebody trying to do something else.
Exactly. Yeah, having respect for other people's space, so that you're not getting under people's skin needlessly. All of these things are so much more important than, whether your wave server is working or not. I mean, yeah, you want that to work. That's great, but the show will probably come off just fine with that, whatever's in the console. I'll bet you a lot of money that you could put on a show with whatever's in the console and it will be fine. But if you piss off the crew, you're going to have a bad day. And it's just, understanding, who, when it comes down to who is it I need to please when I can't please two people. One of them is going to be unhappy with what I do, no matter how I do this. Understanding how to decide which of those people you make sure is happy versus the other person that you let be not as happy. And that's a political skill, but just understanding. And if you don't understand, figure it out before you make the move, so that you get it right. It's very much worth somebody comes up and just says something ridiculous to you. It's very much worth looking at them and going, I will look into that. Let me see if I can take care of that for you. And then going and finding out, oh, they're the executive producer. I actually have to do the crazy thing they want me to do.
But
and
also
that's okay.
figuring out how to say no when you realize that that's going to make things difficult. It's going to be
exactly.
It's possibly going to fail for you if you try and do the thing that they're asking you to do.
Right.
Go, we don't have time to do that. Let's work on that later. You know, however you need to say it, but say it in a way that you're listening to what they say, but you're still making a show that works.
Right.
You know?
But again, it's still the hierarchy of importance. If it's the executive producer of the show is the kind of person that I deal with a lot, is that upper person, then I may need to go and have a 10-minute conversation with them to explain to them why this isn't a good idea and convince them that we should do it a different way. If it's the guitar player's girlfriend, then I can just go to her and go, we're not doing that, and just move on with my day, because there are more important things than her being happy. And that's, now if I can make her happy and it doesn't negatively affect then I'm going to do that. Like I'm not gonna, just because she doesn't matter, not respect her or do whatever it is that she'd like to have done, but understanding that, because when it really, that's the difference between doing live things and doing studio things, is the show is going to happen at showtime, no matter what. Your amount of time to complete this task is finite, period. It's not expandable.
It doesn't matter what the disaster is. When
makes
it
no
goes
difference.
Up, it's showtime. Boom.
And so you are always having to prioritize what, you always have to prioritize anyway. If things are going swimmingly, the prioritization is easy. You have plenty of time, but we all know that's not how life works. And when stuff really starts crunching, things start going sideways, you need to be able to sort through, what do I have to have versus what don't I have to have, and be able to make those kinds of decisions and understand those dynamics in a quick and rapid fashion. And it's hard to you can't teach that in a school, but you can at least teach that it's important.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the thing. If I had to, to agree with Andy and to agree with Clive, I'm sorry, Mr. Broughton, and to agree with Clive, it's like to at least teach that those kinds of things are important, and to pay attention to them, and to try to learn from the more senior folks who may have a better handle on it and those kinds of things.
Fred, I think you had your hand up earlier.
I was just going to say, for me, in my world, it's comms. I mean, every guy that comes out of an audio school knows how to push faders. You'll get through the show as far as that's concerned, but putting comms together is,
anybody can do that.
An art. And I mean, Peter's like on this panel right
Nothing
here.
to it.
He's like probably the best of all of us at it. But I want to, me personally, I've been reaching out to people and saying, look, I'm at the end of my career. I've been trying to teach people. I want to bring to the United States the term audio guarantee. And I think that because, I go out and do a show and I have myself and one A2, and I'm more than 50% of the show, yet there's 30 people working on the video side. Okay. Why can't we add another position to the show that's called an audio guarantee? And I could possibly be one of those people, or people that that are at the end of our career, and we've sat in that chair for 20 years or whatever it is. And we're there to make sure that this kid that's now come in to do this show, because nobody's going to let somebody walk in from a school and do a broadcast show. It's just not going to happen. But if you had an audio guarantee there that said, hey, if he fails, you're going to sit down in that seat and you're going to do the show. You're going to be paid the same rate as an A1, whatever, but you're there to do comms the first time and maybe the second time. And then you slowly introduce that person to the comm system and you show them, what are you going to feed your IFBs with? What are you going to do? Show me on your console, where are you going to do this? And start slowly, instead of just dumping it all on their head and they're just exploding and going, I don't get it.
You mean
slowly
actual
do it.
training,
And then
on the job training?
You bring them in
Wow.
like 15, 20 times. Let's say at baseball, You got 82 games in a season, right, at home. So for the first 15 or 20 games, you have an audio guarantee until you get the kid proficient at the job. And then we can bring more and more audio people into the industry and not just kill them right off the bat. You know what I mean?
What you're actually proposing is a form of mentorship.
Mentorship. Well, but they do it in Europe. They call it an audio guarantee. There's always a second audio person.
And
which is a term that I've never heard before. So I learned something today, which is fantastic. But I think that's brilliant. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Clive. I cut you off.
Yeah, no, I think it is brilliant. And I was just going to say that I noticed the AES is actually asking people if they want to join their mentorship program. And they've got a couple of term dates laid out in whatever skills you have, if anybody's interested.
And I'm only going to speak for myself, but I feel passionately enough about this idea that you're talking about, Fred, that, I would be willing to discount my rate by some small amount just to help the ceiling of making that happen.
I offered this a long time ago, and I agreed. I'm not discounting my rate. My rate is my rate. You just need to add the third person to the crew.
Yeah, I do. I will say,
video always gets the money for their stuff. The 4K cameras,
particularly in
TVs, switchers that take 50 inputs now.
Right.
EVS machines where you got. Tape guys have
on a TV show. Audio's part of the budget is like this big.
Exactly. But the tape EVS guys have shot themselves in the foot. You got 6 in, 2 out machines. You're running 6 replay machines as one guy. That's insanity. I used to be a videotape operator before I sat in the chair. I would never do that. But they because people kept going, oh well, we can do this. Now it's just a standard.
Yeah, and interestingly, every truck I've been in has at least 3 EVS positions on the bench. There's only ever one guy.
There's only ever one guy. Exactly. He's having to pull stuff off the network, and and if he's not a top guy, he's going to get crushed because most of the shows that are out there now are harder than network shows, and you got 6 hours to put them together. Go. I mean, it's insane. Why can't we have a budget to add a third person, to the audio crew? I mean, even just take it back a step further and have a comms guy. Take comms completely off the A1 table. Like again, going back to my time in Europe in the 90s when I used to do a lot of Tyson boxing, there was a comms guy. You needed something, you went to the comms guy, and he put that all together for you. But we're never going to get away with that here in the United States. But an audio guarantee or a mentorship, whatever. I think that's really something that we should be pressing forward. And I've gotten some pushback from some people, and I've had some good luck with other people. But, unfortunately, in my market, I'm not part of the union, so I don't have a voice. I work under the union, but because Arizona's a right to work state, but I'm not in the union, so I don't have a voice. I can't go to the meetings and propose this. But maybe somebody listening here would do that. I don't know.
Yeah, when before the pandemic, when late night TV people would go out and do remotes, we did have a comms guy for the remotes. That was me. They didn't have one in the studio on their regular shows, but on the remotes we did have a comms guy, and we had a lot of A2s. But
comms guys are overrated.
They are, but they're underpaid.
Well,
absolutely.
See, I don't feel like that's true. I don't think there's no real, really, like, who could make a career, like an entire career out of being a comms guy? Like, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. That couldn't possibly happen. And for those of you who don't know,
I do throw in a little bit of RF on top of the comms. So,
that's to make you valuable.
Exactly.
Otherwise, what would be the point?
And now you're a networking guy too, so you've got all those things you have to learn.
So, David, all the old guys are talking over you. I'm sure you have a 2 cents to contribute. What do you think?
Oh, of course. I definitely come at this topic from a different point because I don't do a ton of live events anymore. Generally focused on the install side of things for arenas and whatnot. And lately, I've been participating in, there's this Audio Nerd Book Club Discord group that is kind of maybe a spinoff of the Signal to Noise Discord group. And currently they're going through the Sound System Design and Optimization book by Bob McCarthy. And I've read that book 4 or 5 times, but I've been going through it again and thinking about this. And, if I had a technician come in that understood a tenth of the topics covered in that book, that technician would be fantastic. Just the fundamentals of acoustics and how sound behaves in a space, the concept that, a loudspeaker is not emanating all frequencies in the same coverage pattern, just those things that, if you've been in the industry for more than, a few years, you get, but if you're coming in right out the gate, you probably don't. So, that's what I would have a new tech, coming in with. And it's kind of a timely topic for us because we've been working with the same crew of techs at Daktronics on the audio side for goodness, nearly a decade. And now we're, we have positions open for more. So the job descriptions that we had put together 10 years ago don't really apply anymore because nobody knows CobraNet.
So I didn't quite catch specifically, David, what you would like the newbies to know.
Really just the fundamentals of acoustics, of electroacoustics, not so much the fundamentals of various curtain thicknesses or things like that, but just how sound behaves once it leaves the speaker. It really.
Now, if we can only get venue designers to actually look into some of this.
Yeah. No. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
well, and concert hall designers.
Yeah, any of them. I don't care. Just any of them. Can we have anybody please think about audio or think about acoustics when they build a building? That would be amazing. I'd be so happy.
But it's funny at some level. As much as we are very defensive about our importance because nobody cares about us. I was literally thinking about this morning, and as I was watching television, I realized I take the audio coming out of my TV 100% for granted. Like I just do. Like I just take it for granted. Like, forgetting, really paying no attention to the fact that, every television show is a huge team of people that are and a bajillion different variables of some of it's nat sound, some of it's on-site, some of it's ADR, some of it's this, some of it's that, on and on and on. And then it's flipped into a commercial and that's a different, and just the sheer complexity of it. And I don't have a fancy sound system on my TV because I'm just not that guy. Even I, who have spent 30 years of a career working in sound, tend to take a lot of it for granted. So it's I think some of it's just a human nature thing where we just, sound is just a thing that happens around us and we listen to it and we go, yeah, okay, I got that. And without having anything remotely like a full appreciation of
I think your head would explode if you actually connected with what was coming out of your TV, because your mind would be saying, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Just like when you're running a show, you can't think that way. We listen all the time. We listen from the second we're born.
Yeah.
But we don't think about how or what we're listening to. Not our job.
A great trick is to mute the video.
Yeah.
Well, then it's just it without the audio, it's just a nightlight anyway. So
no, you said mute the video.
Right. That's what I mean.
Video.
Now it becomes radio.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yeah. When I was actually mixing and maybe mixing music, I would close my eyes.
Yeah.
Because I could hear better.
No wonder you hit the wrong fader all the time.
Yeah. No, that was a trick I used to do all the time because as a musician, most of the time, even if I can't play what they're playing, I understand what they're playing and I can hear it by seeing it. It's like I can look at a guitar player and I can hear half of it just because I know what they're playing because I recognize it. And I had to stop doing that because I would hear things much more clearly than they actually were coming out. I found myself a lot of times, I would stare down at the console, which I also understand can be a problem because you can get too focused in on what's my EQ look like and those kinds of nonsense. But a lot of it was just, I'm going to look down, and not because it minimizes the visuals. We were talking before the show about a show I just did last week where I had a crazy amount of cues, and I, for all intents and purposes, closed my eyes for the show because I needed to minimize the amount of data input going into my brain in order to really focus on what I was doing. And it is amazing, like when you begin to do that, the degree of complexity that you can pull out of things, and the degree of perception that you gain that you don't have otherwise, because your eyes are contributing information that may or may not be actually helping. Which is a huge rabbit trail, but anyway, it's a rabbit trail I like to talk about.
There we go. We did it.
Excellent. We have solved the tech school problem in America.
No,
except
we
for one
haven't
thing.
even begun.
I haven't even touched it yet. We just took a breath. Peter?
I have done classes for dozens of different schools and or unions, or even for vendors about comm. And 90% of the time I'll go in and there'll be 10 or 15, 20 people in the class. And one of them will come up to me after the class and say, this is sort of interesting. I might want to do this, and the rest all want to just be A1s. You can't really teach comms, although they think you can. You can't teach comms in one afternoon. You can't teach anything without putting your hands on the equipment. And that's what I think the schools should do. Besides mixing consoles, they should have real intercom systems and teach that. And RF, real wireless microphones, and frequency
You come out to
coordination.
Arizona, Peter, and see the craft school. There, Fred Aldous put together a very nice curriculum. It's only one of the 11 disciplines you go through, but there is a room with an atom system, and they teach you, the whole 9 yards. So,
yeah, that's great, because
I think internships at your local friendly production company or TV company or whatever would also go a long way, and almost no schools do that anymore.
typically,
I've had lots of kids come out and intern with me. That's how they get their diploma. I bring them
okay,
out.
from that school, right.
Obviously, this was before the pandemic, but I would do baseball or Pac-12 basketball, or just somebody, and I would call them up. I go, hey, I'm going to be here on these days. You got any kids you want to send over? Send them over, and they'd come and get their hours.
For a couple of series of presidential debates, where we go to different universities in the 4 different debates, we have used the facilities, the people, the students in the facilities who are learning audio and learning production to help us out with the whole event. And then usually give them a class after the entire thing. We spend an afternoon with them and talk about stuff. But companies like Clare Brothers and World Stage, when they hire somebody who's gone to a company that teaches you audio, like what Clive was talking about, the audio, how to mix in a studio, and therefore they're not really ready to do a production show. They hire those people. They're very happy to hire them, but then they start them out sweeping the shop, and they work their way up from there.
And that's that because I do think that there's still so much to be said for, you still have to learn how to learn the culture of what it is that you're doing. And I mean, even in this relatively small panel of folks we have here, almost every single one of us works in a different field of audio or a different culture of audio. Like, I spend all of my time doing corporate and a cross of corporate broadcast things. Fred is primarily a sports guy. Mac is doing similar stuff to what I'm doing now, but and then we've got guys who are doing entertainment, and you've got Peter, who's, doing large television events, but is completely on the comm side of things. And David's doing install things, and they're all different cultures and they're all different ways of working with each other. And they're all this soft skills that there's no easy way to teach that in school. And the idea of getting, internships and getting people, it feels demeaning. Like, yeah, I need you to come in and sweep the floors. It's like, it's not about the floors. It's about you hanging out in the shop and understanding how things work, like just absorbing.
See how you fit with the environment.
And watching stuff get prepped and getting shipped and get pulled back in.
See what questions you ask.
Just a little anecdote about sweeping the floors. Back in the mid 70s, when I went to work for Pete, he taught me an interesting way of sweeping, and he was absolutely right, and I was doing it wrong. He would come through and sweep all the benches off onto the floor and then sweep the floor. He didn't clean up the benches carefully. Just everything went on the floor and sweep the floor.
Yeah, but we can all agree about the cable, though. I think I brought this up a couple weeks ago. If you see somebody going like this with the cable, we're all going to be pissed off about it. Doesn't matter where we are.
Right.
When
Take a hike.
A couple of musical tours I was on, the audio supervisor, when they said, okay, everybody who's on the crew, come over here, and they'd hand him 10 or 12 guys. And he says, who can coil a cable? And anybody who couldn't coil a cable, go over to lighting. He got a different person to come onto the audio. He wouldn't take people who couldn't coil a cable.
And the thing is, we talk about it. The reality is, I remember learning how to coil a cable, and I remember it was hard. So I mean, yes, I also know it's easy. Don't get me wrong, but I do know it was a thing. Like, you had to learn how to do, and I was fortunate enough to work for the sound guy at my college, who, I did a stint at the radio station for God knows what reason, because I never went into radio. But through that, I met the guy and I became his little helper guy. He did the main auditorium sound, and I remember nothing whatsoever about doing. I don't remember what the console looked like. I don't remember the speakers. I don't remember what kind of microphones we used. I don't remember the guy's name. Nothing. But he taught me how to coil a cable, and that has opened more doors for me than everything else combined. Then when I showed up some other place with real pros and tried to act like I knew what I was doing, the fact that I picked up a mic cable and could do it with both hands, either direction, backwards, sideways, up, on the floor, however you want, they were like, oh, this guy kind of knows what he's doing. And it allowed me to at least fit in enough until I did actually know what I was doing. So, we keep going back to it, but it really is a huge deal, and something that, learn how to do it, and then get a freaking mic cable and sit there and, watch Netflix and do a cable over and over and over again until you can just do it in your sleep.
Figure out your non-dominant hand.
You touched on it a little bit. Attitude, your attitude when you're working on a show, particularly your attitude when you're working on a tour, where you have no sleep and you're really tired, and you get up at 8 a.m. and you put the show in, you're back on the bus by 2 a.m. If you don't pop off the bus in the morning and say, hey, everybody, how's everything going? You're going to be fired right away, because you have to have a really positive attitude all the time. And that's true of even one-offs.
Oh, I will say that I'm going to admit on national YouTube in front of 3 people. There are 3 people watching now. That everything I say with regards to how I feel about things before noon is a lie. I absolutely.
So you've had 2 cups of coffee.
I've had 2 cups of coffee. We've gotten at least to 11:30. We're thinking about lunch, and then my mood might actually match.
But you see, that's why I joined the sound crew, because the lighting guys have to go in, video, they all have to go in way before I do. So I get a chance to just wake up nicely, get some coffee, have some breakfast, so I'm not grumpy, because a later morning than those guys have to deal with.
But that points out a perfect difference of the difference in culture between different kinds of shows, because of course doing corporate stuff, 6:30 calls and 5 o'clock calls or whatever is not at all unusual. And part of it is, I don't get to show up as grumpy as I feel. Like, I need to have a positive attitude, and I need to, I have gotten really good at making coffee I like in my hotel room, so I can at least get the first one.
Yeah.
No, I bring all the. No. You misunderstand. I bring everything with me. Everything. And then I can have good coffee and then I only drink iced coffee. So coffee is a whole nother. That's going to be an AOS for one of these. It's going to be Let's Talk Coffee.
So when you have a 6 a.m. call or a 5:30 a.m. call, how far do you have to go to get there?
Well, right now,
are you taking an elevator?
You're just showing off, Mac, because I know you.
Right. I mean, right now, for some of my shows, how far I have to go is from my bedroom, which is about 10 feet in that direction to here. But you are right. Also, quite often, my 5:30 call is, coming down an elevator, which does help the mood a little bit. I went through, as many of us still are doing, 20 years of fighting DC traffic for 3 hours every single freaking call that was before 10 o'clock in the morning, and still having to walk in the door and not kill someone. So, I mean, those soft skills, it's like we keep, we're joking about it, but we keep coming back to it. It's like, I mean, that doubles your day rate, kids. Like, that's it. Like, that's the key.
I think there's another.
So the most important skill is how to make coffee. That's what you guys are saying here. This what we've been talking about the last 15 minutes. Is all wrong. Making coffee.
There's another soft skill that I think is really important too. Is when you get to the venue, at least for me and for Andy too, pretty much the first people you got to deal with is the local crew, and that's an exercise in discretion and being pleasant, even when you feel like crap because you only got 3 hours sleep in the bus,
And it takes a lifetime to get to the point where you can go, I need within a short period of time to suss out what sort of crew I have.
Yeah.
What skill level are they at? Are they going to get annoyed because I'm telling them what to do because they already know what to do? Or do they need to be told every little thing because they haven't got a clue? You got to use your social skills to figure out, with some pertinent questions.
And then
what am I working with? What am I working with today?
And then you've got the really gnarly crews like you'll get in the theaters in New York or Chicago, where there's really a lot of please, sir, thank you, sir, and that goes really a long way. It's amazing.
Respect, absolutely. I mean, you should have respect for everyone always, but there's definitely a procedure or a way of dealing with Local One that they appreciate if you do it properly. If you do it improperly, they won't give you the time of the day.
If you're a nice guy, it goes a long way, and that's what you got to be.
Yeah, and reading the room and knowing, there are some people that pushing is the right way, and there's some people that making sure that they realize it was their idea all along is the right way. Yeah. And I mean, all of these things, and I do my shorthand for it is that doubles your day rate, because I believe that 100%. I know a lot of techs who are smarter than me, who mix better than me, or who know more stuff than me, or whatever, but they have rough edges around their personality, and they, and I know that they don't get as many calls as I get, and I know that they don't get the kind of calls that I get, and it has nothing to do with and it's not that they're bad people, but they just haven't learned all of the other stuff that has nothing to do with audio and nothing to do with microphones and nothing to do with anything cool. Nothing to do with Pro Tools.
But it's definitely a pet peeve of mine is when organizations put up with people like that, just because they have some, extra skill of some sort, and they just put up with their bad attitudes or their temperaments or their this sort of thing. I think it's high time that we started to go call people on that and go, you know what, you're being a dick, and then you need to stop right now, because I don't care how good you are at your job, you're not getting along with anybody. And people don't do that. They're always afraid of, oh, let's not upset them because they'll do a bad job. Well, you know what? If they're going to get upset and not do a good job because of their mood, get the hell out.
I'm going to say, only because I've been thinking about it a lot recently, this is vaguely related to what we're talking about. But if you're listening to this at some point in the future time, when for some reason you're listening to this on a podcast, I don't know why, but I appreciate you being here. But this is also a pretty cool way to make a living. And if you stick in it long enough, honestly, like most of the faces I see here, I mean, I'm being completely serious here. None of us have a good excuse to be really like in a bad mood when we're at work. Like we still get to do something we like to do at a level that we enjoy doing it with, frequently people we enjoy doing it with, and for a decent amount of money. And we're not digging ditches, and we're not, there's so many things that we could be forced to do for a living that are way, way, way worse.
Yeah, and I think your comment about with people we like, we tend to sort of move in circles with groups of people, and you get to be friends with them. I mean, it's, when I spent more time on the road, I was spent with friends. I certainly had much more contact with friends in hotels in Las Vegas and Orlando than I, even at home.
And you're right. And some Mac and Mr. Broughton in particular, I knew for, and Pete as well, I knew for years and years on the internet, just as, professional colleagues before I ever, and I have actually never met Mr. Broughton in person. And, both Mac and Pete, actually, I'm not sure I've actually met Pete in person yet. I'm not even sure. Like, I feel like I've had so many conversations with you, I don't even know. But
weren't we all on a panel together at AES?
But I don't know that Pete was there, and I could be wrong. I remember Henry was, but it doesn't matter.
Maybe. Oh, you know what? Pete wasn't there because I was on the panel because Pete was not. It was Pete was the
we had the second choice.
Yeah, Pete was the chairman of the panel, but he couldn't make it.
There you go. But I will say that it's actually a pretty cool career to have, and there's a lot of different ways that you can have it. But that's another thing that I think, maybe my particular answer to this question, and then Lipnick, since I have a picture with you, I'll give you the last word, and then I'll take the last word after the last word. It'll be the last word. But I would love to see schools literally applying pressure in other fields other than the two super cool, everybody wants to do them fields, because 90% of the people that are trying to go into those fields are not going to get gigs. It's just, you can't take 90 people and shove them into 10 jobs and expect good things to happen. It's not going to work. And really helping people understand that, being the A1 is not the only job. Being the A1 concert guy is not the only job. Being the recording guy mixing on Pro Tools is not the only job. That's a tiny, tiny fraction of our industry. And there are lots of us who do a lot of other stuff who enjoy it. And at least I can say in my case, I did the cool music, like mix in front of people thing, and I enjoyed that. I don't do any of that now, and I enjoy what I do now just as much. So I would love to see that emphasized more. Mr. Lipnick, birthday boy, what's the final word?
Oh God, it's such a big topic, and I agree with everything that everybody said. I can only think of one thing that I would add to it. It's all important. Before I get to that, though, I want to pick up on something you're talking about here. I think one of the most satisfying things to do is to be on a gig that, for whatever reason, is not going well, and turn that ship and make it go well. And that is something that I think you get called back. That's when the people who've hired you, they're like, oh, let's use that person again, because they really did turn the ship. We could see this wasn't going right, and they fixed it. That's a
So
great
basically,
skill to have.
sabotage the gig first.
No, really what it is fixing other people's problems, but that's another story. That's another topic for another show. Going back to what schools should teach, this helped me, and I'll just say this: signal flow. And what I mean by signal flow is analog signal flow, like how all of the blocks go through an analog console from the mic jack all the way to the the preamp to the whatever auxes, subs, all that. By extension, digital signal flow, and by extension, just signal flow period of an entire system, whether it be a live system, a studio system, or whatever, because to me, that is the foundation for troubleshooting. And it literally troubleshooting. Let's say you have a problem, something's not working right, and whatever, you need to trace it and track it and all that. But also, I think just the process of learning that can help with other types of troubleshooting, to break a system down to its components so you can say, oh, that's where I need to start. And fortunately, when I worked for 10 years and then I went to school, but they hammered in signal flow and it was really good. I use it every day. Every time I'm on a job, I'm using it.
Yeah, the basic skills of troubleshooting also are.
That's part of, to me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Part of it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Which is probably worth at least 3 cents, because of inflation.
Totally valid. The idea of you got a problem, where do you look first? And how you haven't got much time, you got to fix this quickly.
Is it that way or is it that way?
Yeah,
right.
Understanding because of the type of problem it is. This is where I need to.
And don't change 2 things between tests.
That's huge. That is huge. Don't fix 3 things and they go, oh, I don't know which thing fixed it. Yeah.
I made a post on ProSound Web a couple years ago that just basically was like, how to troubleshoot. And I thought it was like the most obvious, like everybody knows this. And ProSound Web picked it up and published it in Live Sound International magazine because they were like, I mean, I'm exaggerating the story, but they were like, this is revolutionary. And it was nothing more than just like start at one end, only switch one thing at a time. It was like really like for real, I could teach this troubleshooting procedure in 3 hours, like from start to finish in 3 hours. And someone could troubleshoot literally anything, so long as they had the bits and pieces at their disposal. They don't even have to really understand what's happening. It's just a really basic thing of it's not working. Start at one end, troubleshoot, find it, track down the problem.
And that process applies to pretty much anything technical. It applies just as much to comms, to lighting, to networking, to whatever.
I remarked to my wife the other day, I said, I don't know how people function in life, and I meant this completely seriously, who can't fix things. Like there was something broken in the house. I don't know. It was the refrigerator it doesn't make any difference. Nothing that I have any expertise in. I know nothing about it. And I fixed it in 25 minutes because I just know basic, process of elimination. Well, it's got to have something to do with this. And so I'll check this. And then and sure enough, it was whatever it was. I have no idea. I think it has something to do with the television actually, but it doesn't matter.
Except for plumbing. There's some dark arts in plumbing that I just don't understand.
No.
I second that.
You should go to plumbing school first before you get into audio.
Right.
Audio is all about plumbing.
Exactly. That's why my name is.
But not actual plumbing. That's the problem.
Yeah, I fully understand plumbing. I just can't do it. I have never sweat soldered a copper pipe that did not leak.
But your XLRs don't leak.
Not once have I had a sweated copper joint work.
Well, and then you're right, and that is a dark art. Okay, I'm gonna wrap us up with a story that's vaguely related to what we're talking about, but it's my show, so I get to tell a story. So we got a call. This was in the early '90s to do a jazz show at a high school. and full truck of local production gear, monitor console, front of house console, full PA, the whole schlemiel for a jazz show at like 2:00 in the afternoon at a high school. Weird. We show up at the school, we open up the truck, and like there's 15 kids that are all 20 kids, all assigned to help us. And we're pulling rock and roll gear out of the back of the truck down the ramp. And I'm having to like tell them, let the PM4000 go down the ramp, because I told them it was heavy before it crested the top. So then 10 of them started pushing as hard as they could the other direction because they were afraid it was too, it's like, let it go down. But like 20 of the most enthusiastic high school kids, they were fantastic. And then we proceed to set up a stage, and I've got tons of them. They're engaged. They're interested. They're like, what are you doing? And how are you doing this? And I'm showing them, I did monitors, which was weird. And I'm showing them graphics, and I'm showing, how the things, and they're just like, oh, this is amazing. And they're running cables, and they're doing like good lines of cables and this and that and whatever. And, I find out somewhere along that process that this was a magnet school that had their own television studio and their own production studio. And everybody at this high school was crazy about anything tech and production related. And this was the greatest thing they had ever had happen to them in their lives, because a real live pro sound company showed up at their school, and they treated us, there was like me and the front of house guy, like rock stars. Like they wanted our autographs. They wanted to know everything that we did. Meanwhile, the band for this jazz show showed up. We had no idea who it was. We thought it was weird that we were showing up for a jazz band, and Herbie Hancock comes strolling in. And it was Herbie Hancock and his all-star jazz band that had played at the Kennedy Center the night before, with Billy D. Williams hosting the show. And literally none of the kids cared less about these like world-class, world-famous musicians who were just like, they were like going to have the time of their life, because it was an afternoon, educational show. They had a great time. It was a super great afternoon, but these kids were so enthusiastic about what we did. That's all they really cared about. And I say all that to say, if schools could figure out ways to encourage the flames of that kind of enthusiasm, a lot of the other things tend to solve themselves, because then because these kids didn't know anything about doing live production. They had only done like television production, but they learned really quick and were super engaged. I had some of them literally like were email pals with them for like 10 years after that. So it's a cool story, but it's also just kind of a testament to, if we can get people at the earliest levels super engaged and super excited about what we do, that's probably the best possible thing that we can teach them. With that, I will stop my story and stop the show. I want to thank my friends for joining me for another rousing edition of the Audio Opinion Show. Thank you very much, Andy Broughton, for co-hosting with me as always, and the rest of us old farts and getting older, and David. Are you ready to roll that
while we roll this
fabulous bean footage? Thank you very much. I'll go for it. I don't get to hear a whole rest. I've been on before. So
Bye-bye, boys.
Have fun storming the castle.
Think it'll work?
It'll take a miracle.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.